Hello, I'm Joanna Grace. I am a sensory engagement and inclusion specialist, and I run a thing called the Sensory Projects, and I get to work nationally and internationally doing the work that I do. And I'm also a doctoral researcher studying identity and belonging for people with profound and multiple learning disabilities. And I am autistic. I am the sort of autistic where people say, oh, you don't look autistic, or you didn't seem autistic, or your autism must be mild, like it's a crisp flavour. And in my work, I support people who are autistic and have higher support needs than me, but that notion of my autism being mild, or that I'm not very autistic, is firstly one that the autistic community reject, and one that it's very hard to sit with when I think about my maternity care, because within my maternity care the fact that I'm autistic threatened my life and the life of my baby. And so as somebody who is not that autistic, it's not a thing, it's hard to reconcile that. And so I was delighted to get the chance to talk to you guys, because I thought if I share a little bit of that experience, maybe when you come across people in your practice who don't seem that autistic but have autism on their notes, you'll know that no matter how we seem, it counts for something. So I'm going to try very quickly to tell you some of the difficult bits and also some of the good bits. So, some of the difficult bits. It's a hard place to start. So as somebody who doesn't look that autistic, one of the reasons that I don't look that autistic is because I don't put myself in situations anymore where my being autistic would be apparent. I have chosen a working life where I can do all the things that I'm good at. You know, I have a brain that's good at focusing on information, and so I take in a lot of information. I like to talk about the things that I'm interested in, and I currently get paid professionally to do that. I am living the autistic dream. I do not have a job that has a staff room, an expectation of a wide and varied social life. My job does not require in-person networking, and so I'm rarely in a situation where I am disabled by being autistic, and by that I'm thinking of a social model of disability, in that I am autistic all the time, and sometimes I experience it as an ability, but in certain situations I am disabled by that lack of understanding of my autism. It's the situation that disables me rather than my neurology disabling me. I am a competent and capable person, in as much as anybody is a competent and capable person. But the medical care that I received when I was pregnant is obviously made on an expectation that I would be neurotypical. And I was pregnant during lockdown, so it was particularly apparent to me with the birth of my second child, where it hadn't been apparent to me with the birth of my first child. My first child was both not born during lockdown and also not born in the UK, which played into things as well. So to give you an example, I attended midwife appointments, and I had to attend on my own because of the lockdown situation. And whenever I'm in a social situation, my number one concern is that I get that situation right. That is a higher priority to me than anything else. I am accustomed to doing that. I have learned to do that through a variety of grotty experiences. So I know that when I go into a social situation, and a meeting with a midwife is a social situation, I need to get that right. And the way that you get it right, you think about that midwife is going to be seeing countless pregnant women per day, and at the end of her day, some of them will have been difficult women, and some of them will have been easy, and one might even have been fun, and what I wanted to be was her best appointment of the day, and I definitely didn't want to be a difficult one or a glitchy or an awkward one. So as I got in my car to drive to my appointment, I would rehearse out loud the things that I might say during that appointment. So you always need a sentence about the weather, and I used to choose clothes especially so that I could talk about the clothes. So I remember wearing leggings that had otters and rainbows printed on them, because I knew that when she pulled the top of my leggings down to look at my bump and to do the, to do all the prodding and things that people do, that she would say something about the leggings. And so I had a little sentence that I could say in reply to this sentence, and I'm almost fixing the conversation so that I definitely will have a thing to say in reply, because spontaneous conversation is tricky for me. And so when she asked questions about how the baby was or how I was, I gave the answer that I was best at giving. I didn't give the most accurate answer. And so when I had 48 hours of very strong contractions, when my baby was just a few months old, still in the womb, I didn't tell anybody, because I don't generally volunteer information unless it's asked for. And that might sound like a sensible thing, but most people, when they're experiencing contractions like that, would mention it to their husband, would tell their mum. I don't. So that's one of my vulnerabilities. And I thought, in my head, oh well, the midwife will ask me. But she didn't, and I didn't volunteer the information because I was focused on getting those conversations right. And at that point, the social communication differences that I experienced as an autistic person threatened the life of my unborn baby, who was fine. And then later on I got to have my little baby in a water birth without any medication or intervention or anything like that, and it was fabulous. And after he was born, I had had an exceptionally large placenta, so large that we named it, and when my little boy was born he had some differences to the way that he was physically, that the midwife told me they usually only saw in twins. So this placenta was big enough to have been his twin, and after he was born I lost quite a lot of blood as the placenta came out, and passed out for a while and worried everybody for a bit, and then I was sent home, and I was told that bleeding after childbirth is normal. And this is something that I'd been told before. The person doing my discharge chat said to me, bleeding is normal, wear pads, it's fine. And so I went home and I was bleeding, but bleeding is normal. And I was still bleeding, but bleeding is normal. I've been told by a medical professional that bleeding is normal. And in light of what happened, I feel foolish, but I also want to defend myself in that I trusted a medical professional. A medical professional told me that bleeding was normal, so when I was bleeding, I went, okay, I'm bleeding, bleeding is normal. I just took what I had been told, because I rank your opinion on this as qualified people higher than mine. Obviously, somebody not understanding things in as literal a way as I tend to understand things would have heard in that appointment, bleeding is normal, but if the bleeding goes on for ages or if it's too much blood, let us know. But I only heard bleeding is normal, and I tend to take things on face value, and I trust people, and so bleeding is normal. And I went home, photos of me from that time, so white. I began wearing this pink cardigan because I felt it added a little colour to my complexion. My husband refers to it as the cardigan of doom and has thrown it out. But bleeding is normal. And again, when the midwife, the person who comes to visit you after birth, visited me, she didn't ask me anything about bleeding, so I didn't tell her anything about bleeding. And this sort of story accumulates in me going to the toilet one day when my baby was about, I think he was nearly 3 months old. You know, that's a lot of bleeding. I was tired. I went to the toilet and I did a wee, and I stopped doing my wee, and I was going to wipe, but I could still hear my wee, and I thought, oh, I'll just wait until I've stopped doing this wee. But it didn't stop, and so I was thinking, well, and then a big clot, like the size of an orange, came out of me, and I realised that I was going to have to, you know, good luck to the bathroom floor. And I put my clothes back on, and I went downstairs, and I just very calmly said to my husband, I think I need to go to hospital. And again, somebody else might have come screaming down the stairs going, I need to go to hospital, I'm bleeding. But I just said, I think I need to go to hospital. Perfectly calm, you know, neutral face. My husband, bless him, he knows me, he loves me, he just dropped everything, and he was like, my goodness, if she says that, that's serious. Legged me to hospital in the car as soon as we parked up, and he took me straight to where I'd had the baby and parked me in, and I said, I think I need a wheelchair. He got me a wheelchair and wheeled me in, and we are, you know, old parents. So we wheeled in, me in the wheelchair looking a bit pale, and him saying, my wife is bleeding. And they sort of went, yes, you know, bleeding is normal, you're being a bit, you know, okay, you come down here. We had the baby with us, and they put him in a little waiting area, and we said, oh, we'll check her over, and they said to me, oh, you know, do you need the chair? You can walk up. I was like, no, I need the chair. And this is a common thing for autistic people. We do not present emotionally in the same way as non-autistic people, and we do not express pain in the same way as non-autistic people. Research shows that autistic children are half as likely to receive pain medication as non-autistic children. So because of our idiosyncratic expression of these things, we're not read in the same way that non-autistic people are read. And I was taken up to a room with a bed and stirrups, and the doctor said to me, hop up onto the bed, and I said, I don't think I can. He's like, you'll be fine. And I stood up. The effect was spectacular. It was like a water bomb had gone. It went up the walls, it went up the cupboards. And at that point, everything changed. I passed out. I came round with this doctor, you know, shouting at me to wake up. My husband had been brought up. Instantly, I was losing an enormous amount of blood very rapidly. And I think they brought him in so that, you know, he could be there to say goodbye, type of thing. Had I had typical modes of communication, had I understood things in a non-literal way, had my expression of, you know, need for treatment been recognised more quickly, I would have had a very different experience of healthcare. But then on the positive side, I had a midwife supporting me as I approached birth, who really recognised that my needs were different, even though I do a really convincing impression of not having different needs. She took that my being autistic meant something and asked me what I needed, and one of the things I really wanted was to know where I was going to give birth. And ordinarily in a non-pandemic time you could have visited and seen, and she said, well, you know, we've got photos of the birthing suite online, is that? And I was like, I literally, like, when I'm going somewhere new, I will walk it on Google Maps before I walk it in real life. And so she filmed the journey from getting out of her car in the car park, like walking up the path, through the fire doors, through the bit of like corridor that doesn't look particularly lovely, into the birthing suite, which has a very different feel for it. And so I got that walkthrough first, which was fantastic. And then after the experience with the midwife and not saying about the contractions that I mentioned earlier, and another couple of experiences that I haven't said because I'm trying to be brief, I decided that it was important that I put information at a glance information on my medical record. So I had made an A4 sheet that said, I'm autistic, this is what this means for me, here's what you need to know in order to better support me. And I had information about my communication and how I express pain, things like that, that were like an at-a-glance guide. And when I went in to have my baby, I had 2 midwives supporting me that night, and one of them read that top document, and I don't know how she did it, but she just took it all in. So when that emergency situation happened after, and I lost blood and I passed out and everybody came into the room, one of the people who came into the room was going to do something to me that she knew from that document I would fundamentally object to. And I was all sort of pale and dizzy and saying, no. And the doctor was going, yes, this is the best thing. And she was like, no, you mustn't. And the doctor was like, but it's the best. She went, no. And I just loved her so much. She defended me and she defended my needs as a neurodivergent person so beautifully. And I've had a number of articles published in midwifery journals and magazines. So if you're curious to know more about my experiences, I will let you have those links, and you are very, very welcome to come and connect with me online. All of my social media profile details are available via my website, which is just www.thesensoryprojects.co.uk. Thanks for listening to me.